only do some things, and that's what I was trying to talk to Riley about, to get logged into Facebook, because the last update was August of like 21 for the CEDC. It's like, they just need to start, just get it going. It's so simple, it takes you 2 seconds. And I think we should have an event on Facebook for the annual breakfast, because Bryce Dusenberry, who owns Columbia Rentals,
We're just waiting for Carly to jump on this one.
Breakfast and stuff. I'll send you the official invite. And look, there isn't one. It's just like save the date. Nobody's going to for RGPs. There's no way we like.
I go and get the girls.
Yeah.
The scale of stuff they do for
Small things that create a few minutes.
well, my in-laws were between Marco and Nate.
Yeah.
When they built
Yeah, and
Iowa,
I was like,
they
I was in here
built the
just
high
last
school.
week, so I was like,
For the
I'm sorry, I'm not gonna let you guys know this is for me, so I got time to go, not bothering you. But I had Lisa send me all of these Word documents.
Thank you.
Stan?
Just moving down.
So I guess I'm calling the meeting to order. Ruth's hi, Ruth. Ruth's the chair. Who's going to run the meeting?
Somebody.
Okay.
Feel free,
All right, I'll
Dave.
call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody. And Ruth, if you would, go ahead.
I sorry to miss the meeting this morning, the all full board meeting. Something came up at RMI and I couldn't be there. I guess today we want to talk about the viability of the committee. I want to thank Carly, by the way, again for the presentation at the college, community college, which for me was an enlightening experience. And one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about, and I'll just throw out my thoughts. I think we could all do that if that seems appropriate. Or do you want to start another? We could start by, why don't we start by if Mike or Dave want to give a brief history of how you see the committee as having worked in the past, or the benefits of the committee. Partly because what I've been thinking about is that a board's job is really to support the staff to carry out the mission of an organization. And so I'm not sure it's appropriate necessarily for the committee to just decide yes or no that this committee should exist without understanding the value to the staff. And also the problems for the staff, right? What are the challenges and what are the benefits?
Well, Mike is back here with us. Mike, too bad.
Well, we felt the committee started because of issues relating to businesses telling us that they were having trouble finding talented and skilled workers. At the time, we had, before the committee started, we were working with the college, we were working with the New York Works office, whose offices are at the college, as well as we had regular contact with the 6 school superintendents and Questar. I worked with Dr. Cruz previously and Jim Church as well. And we did a job fair with the chamber and the newspaper. And then we did that 3 years in a row. And there were 2 problems with it. One, the newspaper was selling advertising and it got, you had to pay a lot of money to participate. And half the employers came from Dutchess County and Rensselaer County and Berkshire County. And we then and on that we worked with the newspaper, the chamber, and Maureen Boughton, who was the director before Chris Nardone. When Maureen left, initially with health reasons and then retired, there was a gap and there was no communication, and we had just partnered with the college on the Career Connects program. And so we kind of filled a gap of coordinating monthly meeting, and then during COVID, every other week meetings, as to how we could support the workforce and education component of economic development. There's not an economic development textbook that doesn't say workforce development and education is a critical part of our role. But I think over time, we've determined that there are other people in the arena who have a role, if not more an active role than ours. And with limited staff and limited resources, I mean, I've always looked through a prism. Is this something we lead? Is this something we partner with people on, or is this something we simply provide support? And, I think that our role here is really to partner, to have a seat at the table, to be a voice of the economic development and business community along with the chamber. I think that it's worked out that it's been joint with both counties because the college brings us together, and you get some critical mass. If you were going to have any type of support or sponsor training programs, I guess the real question is, with the principal players being Questar, the school districts, chamber, the college, and the workforce office, is there someone who's going to take the lead that we can partner and support? And if so, is it consistent with the needs of our constituency so that we're not undermining that process or that lead organization? And I think we need to be there, but we don't have the resources at this point to run it, nor do I think we should, because of the people who other organizations that are there. And I think you've been here for most of our engagement in this, Dr. Drummer. Is that pretty well positioned where we are and what we're struggling to resolve?
No, I totally understand that. I'm going to ask a really ignorant question here. Does anybody from the CEDC serve on Chris's Workforce Development Board?
Yes, Jessica does.
Jessica, okay.
Jim
Seems
Jim Le Pen had been our representative, and when he rolled off the board, we did not have someone, but Matt Morrell appointed Jessica last fall.
Okay, that's great, because it seems to me that with Jessica on that board, that's where, Chris Nardone obviously is the college's key connector with respect to workforce development. As there are two paths here. We have workforce development training going on, obviously, with our credit and non-credit programs. And we work very closely with Chris with respect to what opportunities are out, in our community, so that students have a clear pathway when they walk in the door. And since Chris's arrival, I think we have really strengthened that to a great degree. I think certainly Kellyanne plays a part here, with connecting students to internship opportunities, which prepares them to take the next step. So quite honestly, with Jessica serving on that board, she could report back to the group. I'm not sure that this committee really has a purpose. No offense to anybody who's on it, but college,
Hold on, Carly, can you hear us?
our whole focus is to, prepare
Hold on.
students for whatever career path they want.
So she knows the stuff. Oh, wait, you're not. Hold on a second. I'm not sure what happened.
I can hear you.
Provider like that. Oh. That's
Hold
what
on,
happened.
Carly. I don't know, you, all of a sudden, we can hear you.
That's the other day.
Now there's
Now we're set up. Now we're watching TV.
That's okay. What's the lane contract? Texted me for the lane contract.
Oh, I didn't see it on the agenda. Oh, it was the little version. I didn't notice the auto correct. Here, I can do it on here.
But did you guys stop using the HDMI?
I was gonna say, is Mike Malinsky there? He can do this.
There we go.
There we go.
We lost you.
Okay, can you hear me?
We missed sort of the last probably 30 seconds, Carly, of what you were saying.
The reporting back from the workforce board.
Correct. And I like I said, I'm not sure that this committee really has a definitive purpose at this moment, because with a representative on workforce development board, you know, it's covered. If something comes up that needs CEDC support, obviously Jessica is going to deliver that message.
Are there any other members of the committee who want to? And Carly, I was going to ask you to, so we're covered. I'm glad you spoke up. Any other members of the committee who want to chime in?
I would just mirror that. I mean, those are my thoughts exactly. I don't know who should run it. It sounds like workforce development should be the point organization, but someone needs to run it, and all the different organizations should have a seat at the table, including CEDC. My thoughts.
I'll just add to Carly and Ruth, just so you know who's in the room. You see everybody plus Mike and plus Andy, and then staff, just so you're aware.
Yeah.
That's
Because
all that's different.
The other interesting thing, though, the thing that interests me was the work that your team did to go out and visit with all of the businesses. You know, how do we help support individual efforts like that, where there might be, you know, we could be helpful to connect them with someone they wanted to see they couldn't, someone had follow-up that is outside the scope of the college's purview. And, you know, because I do think that that's not leading, that's providing support to a partner who thinks that we may bring something to the table to support and advance an effort that they're leading.
That's absolutely correct, Mike. I think what would be really helpful, you know, because we can't be every place all the time. When you are out in the community and you're having a conversation, you or Martha or Jessica or whomever, and a business says, you know, gee, I wish we had X, Y, Z, then, you know, please let the college know, because yeah, they're this intersection. It's really important to have that communication. And you know, as you learned from the presentation in January, many businesses in our community have really no idea what the college provides. And whether it's, you know, going to their site, you know, and providing training, or whether it's, you know, setting up a special, you know, track for employees, you know, whom they want to educate, you know, whatever it is, you know, we are nimble and we can do this.
Well, I think what we learned from having the meeting that you set up for us was, you know, we really should include in our talking points, or even a one-page handout, that, you know, we are a conduit to the college if they're not already connected to the college.
Absolutely.
So you're really,
Yeah.
so what you're
Like we're
saying,
having Jessica, Martha, and Chris do with our programs.
right? So the college is a strong partner of the CEDC and vice versa. Wait, so does that necessitate a committee, or are there other partnerships? And and can those partnerships be supported by staff adequately? I guess is the question.
I'm thinking it makes sense to have a committee 3 or 4 times a year, because I do think it will keep it a focus for those of us who are actively engaged, and we can bring in a speaker or someone who can share information. And then the board isn't losing track of the fact that this is one of the priorities of the organization. But I don't think we need to meet every other month. Maybe twice a year.
Agree. And I think with Jessica on that board, she can, you know, report, you know, to the committee, you know, if we're meeting quarterly or, you know, whatever the time frame is.
So it can be a
But, you know,
moment. It can be a moment of convening, which we keep talking about, right? So for CEDC to say, hey, we want to just bring a lot of partners together in the room. We want to stay connected and encourage collaboration.
Although I do think that I think I defer to Chris and to Carly as to the convening. My plan would be, we would suggest things to them and say that if you want to do this but don't have the resources, we can help you. Because I do think it really, we can't be off convening something outside of the team.
And it might be helpful to have Chris attend the meetings as well.
Yes, and he's been great attending the Board of Supervisors meetings with me and giving them updates and data at the Economic Development Committee meetings. And maybe that's what the, and I do think continue the partner meetings that we've been having, but where we're not leading it, we're sitting at the table to provide input or support.
Who leads those currently, Chris?
Chris. And I think when what's so amazing about what Chris does is he's hands-on. And so sometimes he doesn't have the time to be able to, but I think he's great when we get him on those calls because he adds the reality of what the people who are out of work or looking for work or need training, because he deals with them. And when he was telling us about taking the family up to the Albany Rescue Mission, I mean, that says it all.
Yes.
Let me ask you this, is it a good idea to have Chris identify someone for the committee, whether they're here or not yet, as somebody who's hands-on and so deeply involved, as to identify who for him would be a good representative or partner on this committee? See what
I
I'm
think
saying?
he's willing to do it himself, but I think that
I didn't want to suggest that.
If we can't, it's up. I think that I appreciate. Yeah, if he wants to send Danielle or someone, that would be fine. But he's very hands-on, and we do talk 2 or 3 times a month anyway.
I know he's busy, and I didn't want to, suggest that.
I think he really enjoyed it, Ruth.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
And I think it's more finding a common clearinghouse of questions. Where do people get their questions answered, and where do we each get information that might enable us to help someone? Take the Ginsburg situation where they wanted to do the trucking course, and then they heard someone through their industry association had gotten ARPA money in the North Country to do training. And they called here. Well, if we didn't convey that to Chris or to the college, that might be a lost opportunity, because we say, well, Columbia County doesn't have ARPA money, but you might want to run that program and figure out a way to make money off it.
Yeah. Mike, I also just want to say that, I think that you are someone who is, you've got a brain for holding a zillion people together in your mind as a connective network. You're really good at that. Not everybody is. And I still think there's a convening role. You can't assume people get the time to get to know people in their own field, even in the county. You know what I'm saying? So you're talking about a lot of very busy people when you talk about workforce and education. And for those people that come together, in a space is valuable just for that reason.
What Jessica and I were talking about was, I think there's some work we need to do with the participants of skilling the gap.
Yeah.
As to what the follow-up should be there. Should it be another fall convening? And then to what extent, we can provide funding, marketing, participate in the program. And I think you're absolutely right. I think that could be an annual event. It could have a different feel each time. I know we talked at one point about going out into 4 quadrants of the county, but then you really need to do 4 quadrants of Greene County, and now you have 8 events. I mean, that gets a little dicey. And maybe mix up the time of the event and the duration of the event. So, and maybe focus it more on businesses and educators, because I think we were really disappointed collectively that we didn't have many business people at that event. And maybe through our board, have a focus group as to why and what would work for you. You know, it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon better than 9 in the morning, or is 8 o'clock to 10 better than 9 to 12? I mean, I think it's more getting feedback. But I think we should have a annual fall partner event that brings people together as you're discussing, but we can provide the infrastructure and the support and modest funding, but I think it has to be a partner event. It can't be a
I would
CEDC.
I'd also, you know, it's a great idea, Mike, and I also would not be afraid to shrink the expectations of that. So in other words, having a Zoom presentation that invites all partners so they can actually come without getting in the car, and invite anybody who, you know, in the 2 counties who's on a big list.
Kind of like what we did with housing. We had 180 people on the Zoom call with
And just-
Patterns for Progress doing their report.
And just having a listening session. So the committee, maybe one committee meeting a year is just a Zoom listening session where we hear from people out in the counties. And
You know, we do have, you know, I spent some time with Amber Mooney last week at the Business Council event. And she's running the ESD program. She was very helpful in getting her staff person back to us on the program that we were discussing with healthcare. I did hear from Melissa Mack before she took leave for surgery, that the health department is coming up with workforce training program, because ESD, it doesn't fit their business creation and support. And that's why they're really not, you know, they're only looking at key types of jobs, and they didn't include healthcare in those jobs. So the health department now is setting up a separate program. So I think we can get advanced traction on some of that stuff and get that information out to people in a way that benefits the college and the school district.
so the only other thing I would suggest is that if the committee remains functioning, I personally think it would be useful to sort of identify generally ahead of time, whether it's 2 meetings, 3 or 4, what the goal is each quarter, how, so that we know what we're coming before we get to the table. What does the staff need from us for, you know, this quarter? Or is this a convening of meeting people out there in the field? You know, just sort of a clear, because it's not like we can do deep work, right? But we mean to be supportive. So how can we be supportive, and how does that break down over 2 to 4 meetings a year?
Yeah, well, and you know, even looking at the list of stakeholders, it was 8 pages long, right? I mean, and so if you got half of them there, you're home run.
And whenever you ask people to tell you, if you have a listening session, you ask to hear from people, you got to know what you're going to do with all this information you get.
We finally found out that you can download chat so that you don't have to take notes. This was really helpful, I think. Jessica, did you weave this into the strategic plan?
Yeah, absolutely. I do have a quick question, Carly. There, and forgive me because I don't remember the professor's name, but he presented at the workforce meeting at the college back in January. He was the one who went out to the businesses. Forgive me, I don't remember his name.
Yeah, that's
Kenny.
Yes. So he had collected a lot of information. Is there anything that CEDC can support sort of that effort? I know he was doing what he was doing based on sort of the off season. He was doing that during the summer. Is there anything that maybe CEDC or this committee can sort of follow up on that end? I don't know, just throwing that out there, as it seemed like he had some great information and collected a lot, and I wasn't sure if there was, you know, something we could support with that.
Or if he could say, you know, could you get me data on something, or could we staff him to provide him some staff support, not take it from him and run with it?
Yeah, no, it was just, yeah. Staff support.
right. I think Jessica, that's a very lovely question. However, from what he gathered, it's really the ball's in the college's court now, to be following up with the businesses with what we heard. So I think if we need CEDC, yeah, we would come and say, we need help with XYZ. But the things that you saw that came up were what I call low-hanging fruit. Just basically that, they need more people who have soft skills. That's something that the college can provide. They need people to, they need people who have GEDs. We can go to the business and offer that training, which we have started that program already through Amanda Karch and community engagement. By the way, Amanda and Chris Nardone work in tandem on many, many projects. So she's another resource for us. But I think it was mostly a conversation about what can the college do for you that you're unaware of, right? And so I think a lot of this is now we're working together to be back in touch with these companies and say, when we spoke in July, whatever, here's what happened, here's where we are now, just keep track of it. It's
and once you get those initiatives set up for the people that specifically ask for them, then we can help you market them to people who might expand on them.
Yeah,
Maybe
exactly.
Smaller organizations.
Yeah,
That's sort of where smaller that might be able, that you didn't necessarily meet with, but might be able to take advantage of.
And the other thing too is, as you identify the things that people need, I see a lack of, I think our programs are good, and I think for the people that attend them, the small business programs, but some of the certificate program type things that could be created, you would not be getting people who are doing it either out of the goodness of their heart to give back to the community, or because they want to market you to sell you insurance or accounting services. Andy's here, so I won't say legal services. But you'll get professional training from academic professionals at the college.
yeah.
Not that you won't bring in adjuncts from time to time, but I see some of the programs that we run. We're running a business program. It's a panel of 3 people who come after work, and we might give them a stipend, but in many instances they're there to market their firm, not provide substantive training.
So would someone still do things like career day? Would things like that still happen? And who would take the lead on that? Just as one example.
I think that's a question for staff. Is it something that staff needs support on? Is it something that's fruitful?
I think we should support. I don't think we should take the lead. I think we should be a support corner. But so how would it happen? I'm just asking, how would it
Well,
happen?
can we keep the meeting between the 6 partners at least once a month or every other month?
Okay.
Right? The meeting that you've been very willing to participate in, Carly, but with Chris and Jim Church and the 2 chamber presidents and the James Hanish, so that, hey, we're communicating amongst each other, and if they have a good idea that we call hop on the bus with them, we'll get on the bus with them. And if we have an idea that they say, don't waste our time, we move on.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Kind of like what, we've kind of put Career Jam on hold,
that's an enormous amount of work, I think, for not a fruitful return, quite honestly. I will tell you that on March 25th, the college is hosting an open house, and faculty are going to be on hand, and they're going to be giving demonstrations of their programs. So for example, the Auto Technology building will be open for people to go in and really learn about what is involved, in becoming an auto mechanic. So I think, we already have a flyer for it. Maybe I should be sending that to CEDC, and you can spread that word,
We can put it in our March newsletter next week.
Yep,
And
that
get the
would be
chamber
great.
to do.
Yeah, because that's like that's a, nothing starts before you have an education. Let's face it, you need the training, whether it's a certificate or a degree. And I think, one of the the clearest examples of a certificate on the non-credit side is our new residential wiring class that we started in the fall. It filled immediately. We offered it again in the spring. It filled again. So there's clearly a need for electrical, like electricians. Now there's more to it than just this introductory certificate. There's got to be additional training involved, but through building construction technology, we're going to be offering that as a micro credential, starting in the fall. But if things go well, that's the plan.
I didn't mean to make it sound like we should be doing Career Jam. I was only using it as an example of a program. That's all.
Well, there was a career thing that the chamber did with one of the school districts. But,
Okay.
But yeah, I think if we can help co-market and if somebody who gets our newsletter sees that they can give it to their kid, or they can give it to their nephew, or they can give it to someone that works in their small business. We don't have a direct link to necessarily participants in the program, but.
All right, I'll have marketing send you the ad, Mike.
Can it come to the committee as well, please? That'd be great.
Sure.
Thank you. I also wanted to bring up, is it important to look at the language about the committee in the strategic plan? This whole idea of the pillars, should we just re-examine that and think about whether, just to make sure that what we're talking about today is reflected if there needs to be a change?
I think you leave the pillar because there are people who are looking at us and that's the only thing they're interested in. And if we don't have it there, whether they understand how we're going to implement it or not, it's just what's wrong with those people? They don't understand that workforce education is.
That's fine.
More of a marketing. But I do think the language needs to be that we are supportive partners, not.
Right.
And maybe even list of partners. So that,
Yeah, that sounds great.
So I
think a list of partners is a great statement right there.
I can take sort of what we all just talked about and edit the sort of some of the objectives that are outlined in the strategic plan under this fourth pillar.
Yeah, that would need to be modified.
Yeah.
And we are going to need a permanent chair, which I'm afraid will not be me. I'd love to be.
Right, we'll start marketing. We'll start marketing for one.
I mean, I of course want to suggest Carly, but I know she's got one of the busiest jobs in the county, and I don't want to. But I mean, just the fact that you're doing that monthly meeting, you're so in it, and you know who the players are, you know the climate, the
I think
people.
if we're going to do it, maybe I'll talk with Dave because I think there's some other board members who have an interest in this.
Okay, great.
Yeah. And listen, if we're down to meeting 3 times a year, I could do this. It would be very difficult for me to continue the schedule that we've been on here, but I'm happy to be the conduit. But if you want somebody else, Mike, that's totally fine with me as well, because I certainly am not wanting for stuff to do.
Yeah.
And both of you bring such wonderful perspectives, though. I think that's very important.
You're both always available, so you're a path of least resistance, I'm afraid.
Well, it's very kind of you, Sarah, to say that. And I love, I care deeply about the subject. I just don't feel that I have the expertise to really make the connections. I just don't know the community and the players the way that others do. So
one thing we're looking at with the Center for Economic Growth, that it's in early stages, but we want to coordinate with the college as well, is some type of a manufacturer's program in the 2 counties. And we did have Riley take the PPP list and some other lists we have, and we have about 200 manufacturers from the 2 counties. But again, it doesn't make sense for us to run a program where the principal provider of education and training isn't at the table and part of the plan.
exactly.
Yep. I'll tell you, one of the biggest fields that I would love for us to get into, and I don't see a clear pathway, and maybe you could help with this, is semiconductors, chips. I think the closest industry that we have to us would be plug power, I suppose. And our students, I mean, that's encroaching on Hudson Valley's territory,
I'm happy to set up a meeting. Andy, the president's someone I've known since he came to town, and George McNamee, who's the board chair, his daughter works for us at the Albany Institute. So I think we should set up a meeting to go up there and have them explain what they do to see how you might be able to expand their workforce. Because they're afraid that, I don't know what's going to happen with this wind thing. I saw in yesterday's business review that the construction costs may actually significantly hamper the wind manufacturing facility at the Port of Albany.
Oh, right.
But Plug is nervous as hell about not having enough employees if they're going to hire as many people that they thought for that technology.
Yep.
Just as the hospitals were nervous about Global Foundries taking all the hospital technicians when they first came to town. Let's set that up. We'll
Well, my concern is that what equipment would we need to train people? Because obviously anything that takes funding and any kind of starting a new program, has to go through state ed and SUNY, and there's a period.
Well, it might be soft skills to send that, Global Foundries, the program they set up with Hudson Valley initially was soft skills and learn not to just do it, because we don't want you messing with our $50 million tool without giving you a year of training on site. So what they were looking for were people who could follow directions. And so, maybe it's an after a program, but we can get a meeting at Global too. And maybe what it does, at least it tells you that it's not something you're able to do.
Right.
And at the same time, it might open a window that we could adapt. It's not what we thought we could do, but we can adapt to meet what they need and do something for them.
Right, because I do agree that I believe that both Global Foundries and Plug Power are offering apprenticeship opportunities. But at the same time, finding students to commit to that and drive that distance, that's another big challenge. So, I think I would love to have a meeting just to get to know these people and find out what it would take, for us to start something that we could be a pipeline, not necessarily for apprenticeships, but, sort of like a micro-credential quick training.
There you go.
End of that meeting.
Thank you.
Mike's gone.
I will follow up with you, Carly.
Okay, something I said.
Lost you again.
Yeah, this is different though. This is not the same problem.
You lost us?
No, we can hear you. You're just not on the screen.
Oh,
So
well, that's all right.
That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, that's fine with me.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Anything else? So we have some goals and clarity.
Well, I guess what we've decided here today is that, one, we don't need to lead this, that we should change our objectives on our fourth pillar, that we should maintain our committee, but we should only meet once or twice a year, and that's to be determined. And then we rely on the three of you ladies to report on what goes on with workforce. Is that pretty much it?
I think that's it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
great. So I'll take this and I'll send out a draft just to the committee first to look at those edits. But I will need to bring it back together with a full strategic plan.
Yep.
In March, whatever that date is, our next. board meeting.
28 or something, right?
Okay, so I'll get something out hopefully in the next, give me a week.
Good,
Okay.
very good. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Have a good day.
Bye. Steve there?
No.
No. Planted some snow.